Much better. Okay, there we go. Got the setup a little bit better.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Alumni Conversations. My name is Patrick Hughes. I'm part of the Alumni Relations team, and today we are here with our incredible graduate, Ricardo Ariza. And how you doing, Ricardo?
Doing very well. Yourself?
Good. Ricardo is a 2004 Computer Animation graduate. He's currently an artist at Valve Software. Credits include Deadlock, Counter-Strike series, Dota 2, Half-Life Alyx, Portal 2, Left 4 Dead, and Uncharted 1 and 2 games, just to name a few. So welcome, Ricardo.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, so it's early out in Seattle. Tell us how you're doing, and tell us what you're doing now, career-wise.
I'm doing really nice. I'm doing really well. It's beautiful and sunny outside. I'm here at home with my dogs, so I'm happy as can be. And
And
go ahead,
what
sorry.
we got to introduce? We got to introduce the puppy,
Oh yeah, yeah. This is Patty. She
Patty.
basically lives on my lap. She is the one-eyed wonder, which you can see, which just makes her extra special.
Yeah, yeah. Wanted to get that out of the way because couldn't ignore Patty. So
Yep,
I'm sorry, I
yep.
interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, no. Yeah, recently, I mean, I've been working at Valve Software for the last 16, 17 years. Um, and there, I basically do art. Artist isn't necessarily my job title. We actually don't have job titles. We are a completely flat structure, and everybody kind of is able to do anything they want as long as they're being productive and, helping studios. So I've done things from like art direct, character model, environment modeling, UI design. I even did just enough programming to get me in trouble with all the programmers. So
Hmm.
yeah, I do a
Yeah.
little bit of everything.
And do you know of any other companies that are structured this way?
I do not off the top of my head, no,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about it quite a bit, on our own, but just for this program. So basically, depending on the project that's going on, you can wear a different hat.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and whatever's needed on the project. I mean, if we don't have somebody that specializes in that, somebody on the project will ante up and learn how to do the thing. Meet with other people at the studio to figure out how to optimally do it and start doing it.
Hmm.
We're all continually learning, and that's very much encouraged at our studio, to the point that they'll actually pay for you to take classes.
Mm, very nice. Yeah, good for you. So that's what you're doing now. Um, so let's go all the way back, though. Do you
Mhm.
remember your first position in the industry, or did you go into the industry right away?
No, it actually took me about a year to get into an actual position doing what I learned. So my first job wasn't directly in 3D. It's actually kind of a funny story. So as soon as I graduated from Full Sail, I took off to California. I didn't know anybody, but my sister, one of her friends from all the way back in elementary school, lived out there. So I connected with her. We hung out for a while, and it turns out that she was a producer on commercials. So I was looking for work, and she needed a production assistant. So I started doing production assistant work, or PAs. Um, and as a PA, you basically are doing anything that's asked of you by the studio or whomever you're working for. So I was distributing paperwork, I was running errands, I was grabbing coffee for people, I was answering phones, I was unloading equipment, basically everything and anything. And then while I was working there, um, I ended up I did a PA job for a now defunct VFX studio. And at that point, I started getting a repertoire with the artists on the team. So after building up some confidence, I asked them if they could take a look at my portfolio and my current works in progress and give me any feedback. Well, long story short, that led to an unpaid internship and then eventually a full-time position.
Wow. So PAing in a different industry basically helped you be a production assistant in the industry that you wanted to get into as well.
Mhm. Yeah, it took a little while before I landed at a studio that did visual effects, but I was head over heels just because I had access to people and
Yeah,
started making connections as quickly as I possibly could.
exactly. Yeah. Well, so how are you? So you've come a long way since 2004, right? So what skills that you learned while you were a student here at Full Sail, are you still applying those? Have you had to continually educate yourself? How do you keep up?
So, I mean, the industry's changed significantly since 20 years ago. I mean, there's software that's no longer being used. Pipelines somewhat changed. But what Full Sail did was it gave me a solid understanding of all the different disciplines within, the job, within working in the computer animation and games industry. So that knowledge basically helped me not only specialize, but also understand how my work fits in to the broader picture of a studio. And that just allowed me to make way better decisions and collaborate much more effectively with others. And it basically ensured that I was able to pass on assets that could, smoothly flow through the entire production process.
Hmm.
So yeah, and not only that, but one of the things that Full Sail really taught me was to was how to learn for myself because you only had a very small window of time to learn. I mean, I was basically in a 14-month program, and there was two classes every every month. So I had three modeling classes, one of which was a NURBS modeling class, which is no longer used in film or games, um, a prop modeling class, and a game art class where we basically did very low resolution, almost cell phone quality models. Um, and that was about it. But I had the basis and understanding, and through just continually communicating with some of my professors, even after I left school, I was able to learn and continually get better and sharpen my skills.
Yeah. So is this doing that and being able to do that? Is that what you would attribute your success to, or are there other what other factors came into you being able to? Well, you got your foot in the door, you proved yourself, and you continued to grow. Just, I guess, maybe explain to us a little bit about that journey.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, continuous learning was huge. And also networking is the other big one, and
Hmm.
just a little bit of luck in there. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like continuous learning is probably the most important thing. Like
Hmm.
it keeps my skills relevant, helps me work faster because I learn new processes. It actually boosts my confidence when I'm talking to people because I'm able to be backed up by knowledge and data. And as I'm learning it, I'm part of communities and I'm meeting open-minded people. So, you know, continually learning was one of the big things. And I mean,
Hmm.
there's even a quote that actually really resonated with me from The Incredibles, that was said by the mother. And it's luck favors the prepared. And that's kind of exactly what learning does for me. It just prepares me. And
Yeah.
and on the other
Well,
hand,
and oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. On the other hand, networking was a huge thing, because you never know where an opportunity is going to come from. Like I mentioned, it was a childhood friend of my sister that actually helped me get into the industry. So the more people you meet, either online or on person, the more likely you are to make connections, and because of networking and work ethic,
Hmm.
you know, I've personally been able to work for companies like Naughty Dog, Treyarch, Valve,
Hmm.
and several film studios. Funny thing about that is I've only made one demo reel, and that was a demo reel that I actually had coming out of Full Sail in 2004. The rest of those jobs at these AAA major studios, um, have been through recommendations from people that can vouch for the quality of my work, vouch for my personality, and um, my work ethic.
Yeah, and just knowing you and the time that I've known you, what I can say about you is, just speaking to you, your dedication comes through, and you're very serious about what you know, and you're a very intelligent man. So, and it makes me feel smarter just hanging out with you. That's I wanted to say that. So,
I appreciate that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think your personality is part of your success too, right? Um, being learning how to be yourself and get the job done at the same time and lead others.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, soft skills are one of the other most important things that anybody and everybody has to learn, because you have to understand you're working with these people more time than you're actually even at home with your loved ones or friends, right?
mhm.
So if your soft skills are, really good, um, personally, I would rather hire somebody that has really good soft skills and has pretty good work than somebody that is extremely talented and has a chip on their shoulder. Just because of that, because I literally know that I can talk to that person and be able to work in collaboration with them.
Yeah, yeah, that's gold. I would agree with you. So, coming out of I'm switching gears a little bit. Coming out of Full Sail or any university, there's a lot of anxiety centered around graduation and oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And if you didn't have a for sure thing coming out of school, you probably experienced some of that. You may experience some of that when you're working on a deadline, or um, how do you overcome? And maybe you don't. Correct me. This is just a question, but maybe you don't have anxiety about it. But if you did have anxiety, How do you overcome that? How do you focus and conquer that fear right after graduation?
So I'll be very honest with you. I've been working professionally for 20 plus years, and I still have imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't go away for me because I work with incredibly talented people, and when they, are sitting next to me and I see what they're able to do, it boosts me to want to do better, but I still have that imposter syndrome in me. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, after graduation, like I said, I moved to LA almost immediately. Missed my graduation ceremony. Um, I actually think I was driving through Texas that day, on my way to LA. So, I mean, when I got to LA, I didn't really have any friends. I mean, so I stayed connected with my family and as many friends as possible. Like I said, I met with my sister's friend, and I basically just focused on meeting new people, so that I can have, a friends network and, build a community around me because all of my social life was just gone. I didn't have anybody. And
Hmm.
that stuff really, really helps you in terms of anxiety. And the other thing that I did, which was out of out of the norm for me is I started building healthy habits. Like I started eating better, I started exercising, and I really started just buckling down and staying busy. Um, like I actually made it my job to at least do 8 to 10 hours a day, continually working on my portfolio, um, which, gave me a schedule and allowed me to stay focused. And those are the basic things that I think helped me significantly. And I
Hmm.
still continue to eat as healthy as I can and exercise, which, is helpful. And, make sure I make time for friends and family.
Yeah, and so these are decisions that you came up with your own. There wasn't someone over you saying you need to do this, you need to eat this way, or you did it for yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, good, good. Not
Yeah.
everyone can do that, but
Mhm.
sometimes they don't listen to that voice. Maybe.
Mhm.
Um, so so you went out to LA. You didn't have a support group. Well, you had a friend of a family member who kind of got you into a PA position, but you didn't have coaches and mentors and stuff like that. But I think later on in your career, did you have people that filled those roles? For or do
Uh,
you have them now?
I do have some people now, and typically it's just I mean, not necessarily a traditional mentor, but more of an unspoken mentor, people that I could go to and they help solve problems or give me direction as to how I think about things. Um, but when I was in school, I didn't really have a mentor. I mean, the internet was just in its infancy still. So, meeting people online was a lot harder. But at school, I actually had three really close friends, that kind of helped boost me. Um, each one of those friends were of a different discipline. One of them was a programmer, one of them was an animator, and the other one did shading and lighting. And they were the people that worked tireless with me in the labs. Like we all became the lab monitors just so we could keep the labs open and continue to work because we didn't have computers that were powerful enough to do the work that we needed. So I mean, we would stay up all night. We would actually sleep in the classrooms. We figured out how to set up the chairs so that we wouldn't sleep on the floors, so that we had a little bit of cushioning, so that, when we were doing things like rendering, which you're basically just sitting there waiting for something to be produced, you you have a little bit of time to rest, and we were doing things like eating at when we got hungry at 3 o'clock in the morning, we went across the street to 7-Eleven and got some of the cheapest food we possibly can and ate that. But
Mm,
yeah,
7-Eleven. Yeah.
yeah, it was delicious.
Yeah.
But I mean, those three friends that helped me push my work and gave me honest feedback and, were there when I really, really needed support. I mean, they're all doing extremely well in the industry now. I mean, Dan Neufeld was one of them.
Hmm.
He's the virtual production supervisor at Lightstorm. So he basically um, is the person that helped create that the software which allows James Cameron to be able to see 3D while he's filming actors. Um, and he continues to be the lead person in figuring out what the next software is that they're going to develop in order to help guide, whatever needs to be done. I mean, he's been working on Avatar forever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Bill Spradling was a second one. He was a shading and lighting. So the last time I checked in with him, he was a visual effects supervisor at Zoic Studios. And the last one is Kyle Figgins, animator. Um, and he's in London as an animation supervisor at Industrial Light and Magic, ILM.
So that's that kind of dedication. That's what the results could be after getting out of school. Um, so you can't kind of like just kind of get by in school and expect great things to happen after graduation. So my next question was going to be, what advice do you have for people who are just graduating? But from what you just said, it's kind of like, don't wait till you graduate. Do it early. Give 110% while you're in school. And then let me ask you, what advice would you give people who are just graduating?
So while you're in school, I highly recommend taking the time to, outside of your classwork, start doing your own personal work um, within, your free time, because that's going to give you a leg up. You're going to understand how to do things better, and you're going to be able to practice more. And every time you create something, the next thing you create is going to be better because of it. Um, so like I've mentioned earlier, keep on working, learning, and updating your portfolio. Um, and as you apply for jobs, replace the older work with the newer work, because that shows you a lot better. That shows growth, improvement, and makes a much stronger impression when you apply a second time to a studio. Because if you're lucky, you get in the first time. But if you really want to work at that studio, you got to apply multiple times. The other thing I would say is cater your portfolio to the companies you want to work for. So tailor your work, to the specific style and themes of the studios you're targeting. Whether you're creating animation, modeling, whatever the case may be, um, you have to be within the space of that studio. So let's say you want to be a stylized environment artist, right? You need to focus your portfolio on that. The other thing I would say is don't do fan art or things that have been, recently within pop culture or people that know pe- things that people know very well, because that work, your work, will always be compared to the best version of whatever somebody has in their head or whatever they remember. So it's never going to, unless you're executing at the highest level, it's never going to pass that snuff test.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing I would say is research studios. You have to know, what these studios are. You need to start looking up credits for games and movies that you're interested in, right? And then what I would recommend is start searching for the employees in like LinkedIn, right? You may want to make connections with them, um, but you want to more specifically look for the people that are in the roles you want. Like it's fine to look at the art director and the people that are, supervisors and whatnot, but more importantly, you should probably look at the junior artists, because those artists just got into that studio or within recent time, and they're actually trying to um, kill it at that studio. So they're going to be working as hard as possible, which has a second really cool thing, which most of them, it basically freezes their portfolio in time because they're not doing a lot of their own work because they're so dedicated to the job. And you can see the exact portfolio that landed them in that job, which gives you kind of a bar and an understanding as to what you need to hit in order to do that. Um, and I guess the last thing would probably be, be open to different fields, right? I mean, the traditional games industry are great, but I mean, if you need a paycheck or, and time to just build up your portfolio to land jobs in those studios, try military sim, or architectural visualization, or some graphic design work needs stuff, or you know um, accident reconstruction for courts, right? There's plenty of other fields that you can easily get into and be paid for while you develop your skills to land those jobs at those, studios that you want to work for.
Mhm. Can I repeat back part of what you said to make sure I understand it, to make sure that it's So, because some of the advice that we give at times is like you say, you're catering to a particular studio, you want to work there, so you're looking at that style. You're Did I understand you right that you can look up people who work there in the department that you want to be in, and they usually on LinkedIn would post their demo reel there, correct?
Um,
Are
Not on
you saying
LinkedIn.
look at the? Oh, go ahead.
Not on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is basically when you look up the credits, you can find the
Oh,
people on LinkedIn, and then you can do a search online for their portfolios. A lot of them will probably have it on ArtStation, but some of them have their own portfolio sites, or they could be somewhere else, right?
okay,
Um,
okay. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to make that distinction because not everyone does. Some do, but most don't post it there on LinkedIn. But
yeah.
then you're saying be your own judge of looking at the person who already has that position, looking at their portfolio, comparing yours to it, and how you can improve. Or would you suggest reaching out to that other graduate and saying, "Hey, would you critique my demo reel?" Or how would you
Uh,
approach that?
so networking, right? I mean, reach out like on LinkedIn or whatever. Give them a personalized message. Don't immediately ask for something from them. Um, Tell them you're a fan of their work and wanted to connect or something. And as you build a conversation with them, um, you know, about what they're doing or what it's like to work at whatever, then at that point you build a connection with that person. Um, that will help get you into the door of asking them questions, which they'll be more, I guess, uh, would basically allow you to have them answer your questions, right? And when you ask those questions, you don't want to ask them like, "Hey, can you, critique my portfolio and blah blah blah," because that takes a lot of time. You need to really, really condense it down so they can give you a direct answer, and it could be fairly short and concise. They'll probably be more willing to answer that than to do a full critique. I mean, unless you have a great relationship with them, that's a very difficult thing to get out of somebody, especially somebody you just met. Um, oh, the other thing that I would mention about catering your portfolio, this is actually one that is super important. Um, so you need to look at how many people are within the context, or how many studios are working within the style and theme in which you choose your portfolio to be. So let's say you get, you're interested in creating, I don't know, an art style for Nintendo, right? If you don't get a job at Nintendo and there's no other companies doing that type of work, then you are unable to get a job, right? You need to see if there's like, this is your top studio. You need to see if there's an umbrella of other studios. That way, if you don't land here, you can land in, any number of other studios, which is super important because you don't want to cater your portfolio to such a narrow thing. I mean, you're basically a fisherman, right? You're trying to catch as many fish as possible, especially early on. Hang on, let me move my camera so the sun isn't in it.
Yes, I
There
was
we
going to
go.
say you're. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I love that analogy, and that's something that they can be doing. Well, they can do it while they're in school to research the industry, like you were using Nintendo as the example. But certainly, any new job that they're do your research and how what's under that umbrella
Yeah. I mean,
to
it's
apply.
really simple. I mean, if you want to find out what's popular in games, go to Twitch. People are streaming it, right?
Hmm.
Look at the top games. Make note of them. See what styles they're in, because if they're the top games, There's probably a lot of other companies that are trying to ride the coattails of their success, and you start digging for those, and then you hopefully will find a bunch of studios, and then you know that that's the actual target that you should hit.
Hmm. Yeah. It's kind of like in the music industry. Someone has a number one hit, and then 10 more songs come out that kind of sound like that number one hit. Um, well, thank you for sharing all of that knowledge. I think you brought a project with you that we want to you want to present, and Jim, could you bring that up for us, the first slide, and then I'll let you um, take over the direction for Jim to switch slides when it starts there.
Mhm.
So, what are we going to be looking at?
This kind of shows you the approach to creating video game characters and why, and a little bit of the thought process behind um, what we do and why we make those decisions. So we're going to be talking about a game called Dota. If you can move to the next slide. So Dota is a multiplayer game that draws elements from like strategy games, RPGs, and competitive action games, right? It's in a category of called MOBAs, which is multiplayer online battle arena. And the basic gist of it is, you have to kill little minions in order to gain gold. You have to kill other players in order to gain gold, so you could buy items and gain power, and then basically destroy the base of the other team. So yeah, pretty simple. But make note right now. See how it's at a top-down three-quarter isometric view. So that's super important. That's probably one of the most important things that this slide has to offer. Okay, next slide. All right, so in this kind of shows the character process. Um, once you've once you have come up with the character's design, I won't go into that because we're just talking about visuals. A concept's made. Then a shape model is created, which is a model created of coarse primitive shapes that's colored and seen in game, where you could start making changes very rapidly in order to really, really, truly make the thing exactly how you want. And then if you see this slide, see all the little lines pointing to the middle. Internal feedback and external feedback are huge in this because we're probably not the best judge of it. You'll have a really keen eye for it, but you need to really find out what people are thinking and how they're thinking about it in order to make better judgments and quickly iterate on it. Um, and then once that happens, there's things that are happening in tandem. So this little circle isn't 100% the exact process, but it shows all of the things. So effects are being made, animations are being made, you know, um, you're sculpting. Eventually, you'll end up once the shape model ends up being created, then you'll model the final model. You texture it. Sounds are being made, voice lines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, yeah, and each step of the process should get internal feedback constantly. You should be play testing it. All right, next slide. Okay, so this shows you a character concept, right? Um, it's great that we're seeing this big dude on the side here. It defines the character. It'll show you kind of what the portrait will look like. But the most important thing is on that bottom right-hand corner that's black and white. So that actually shows you what potentially this character will look like in game. It gives you a very strong idea of what the silhouette is. And let's talk about a little bit of that and why it's important. So next slide. So silhouettes, right? Silhouettes are the one thing that you're able to see. That's the reason why you can see like a stop sign a mile away because you're familiar with the shape. You know, um, it gives you the quickest read. You know how you're able to see a friend in the distance and see them walking. You can't see any details, but you know the gait of them, you know what the overall shape is, and you're able to identify them. So silhouettes basically, kind of tell you who's friend or foe, where to buy things, where to eat, not to eat, and then, when to walk, as a few examples. Okay, next slide. So this shows you hero silhouettes, right? Um, so a hero silhouette, much like we just discussed, needs to be really clearly identifiable at a first glance. So one of the most important things is it needs to show the character's orientation so that you know whether or not um, they're coming at you or running away, which is, vital to gameplay. Um, the characters are designed with their most seen pose in mind. And the pose actually needs to reinforce things like the character's strength, their demeanor, um, if they're a fast or slow character, and generally what type of character it is. So as you can see, second from the far left, second down from the far left, you see a guy with a huge sword, you know. And you could probably tell, like in the bottom right-hand corner, you could probably tell that that guy is a knight with a shield. So your silhouette is super important. And as you can see in all of these, the weapons also have a clear, unique read as well, which is very important because as you can see on the bottom, you could see an archer. Immediately tell it's an archer, and there's no detail there. All right, let's talk about the next slide. All right, so this is important because this is important in the hierarchy because it's the character's value. It's basically the range of light to dark, um, regardless of what color or saturation it has. So um, one you could probably argue that value is way more important than color to the design, um, specifically because it's able to create focal points. This also creates the illusion of depth, and it gives three-dimensionality to the object. Like you can already see, the where the arm is and how it rounds around just by these values. Uh, the other things that you can notice here is there's a gradient from dark to light. So the bottom of the character is fairly dark, and as you move up, um, the character is much lighter and has more contrast. So that allows you to draw the eye up and allows you to focus on what's important. Things like their weapons and their heads, where you want to where you want to find out the majority of the information. And it recedes a lot of the things that have high mobility, like their legs that are constantly moving. If your focus were on the legs constantly moving, you probably wouldn't focus on what this character does or is. So next slide. All right, so here we're creating more visual interest, right? In the same way, we're creating a gradient from top to bottom. So the things at the bottom have less value distinction, so they'll be a lot closer. So if something's really dark, the thing buttered up against it will be, close to that. And the reason for that is the human eye um, indistinctly looks for boundaries between areas of contrast. So it makes sense to establish those contrasting blocks of value in order to highlight the forms of the character. So separating each unique piece to have its distinct value helps the read and separates the objects really well. So if you could see on the top left-hand corner, you can tell immediately that the top of the character it has a little bit of the head, has a beard, and it has the most amount of contrast. So your eye goes straight to that. And as you go to the bottom, you have less contrast, right? Um, Below that, you have, character that you could clearly see its head separating from his shirt. And in characters that don't necessarily have strong breakups, like a shirt or, whatever the case may be, like a shirt or weapon, like in the bottom right, we use value gradients in order to break up that character. All right, we could go to the next slide. So in color, believe it or not, less is more. So color theory is pretty important, um, and it needs to be taken seriously. If you watch like Pixar movies, they are masters at this. So a lot of the time, we start by selecting a primary color, which best represents the hero. And then from that point, we start using either complementary, split complementary, analogous, or triadic color schemes. I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide, but we want to keep the color harmony while painting these textures by only introducing colors by blending these three colors, much like you would do in oil paints. That way they stay harmonious to one another. Um, we also avoid using colors that are really dominant in the world, specifically because um, as soon as you start doing that, the the character begins to recede into the world, and you are unable to distinguish it from the actual playfield. And I mean, as a player, one of the worst things to happen is you not seeing the character that's killed you. It feels unfair, and it's not a good player experience. The other thing we do is we also reserve the highest saturation levels for the top of the character. Like we did with the values, we use it sparingly, and we do saturation, the highest saturation in a few little areas. And just like the gradient, we use less saturation towards the bottom of the character and more saturation towards the top of the character. Um, we also, I mean, just a game engine thing, but we also stay away from pure colors, specifically because the lighting within the game will not light properly. Just like if you use pure black or pure white, um, it doesn't allow for the lighting within the game to truly pick up that and won't light. So if you have something like metal, it won't look like metal, etc. All right. Um, the other thing that I would say, last thing I would say about this is once you finish coloring it, desaturate it again and check the character, recheck your values because you could have screwed them up by coloring it. All right, next slide. So this just shows you different color harmonies. So complementary, you can see complementary colors are colors that are more intense. If you look at the wheel next to it, they're colors that are opposite of one another. So like if you look at the purple, you'll see the yellows across from it, or the greens across from it. And this is something that's seen a lot of the times in like American football uniforms, where you need that really, really strong dissonance so they read really, really clearly. Or if you've ever seen colors that are so bright that they're kind of vibrating next to each other, those are complementary colors. Um, Split complementary colors, which is number two, is choosing one complementary color and then you go across that color wheel and you choose two colors which are neighboring from one another. Pretty simple, right? Then analogous colors are just colors that are on the same side of the color wheel. So like, yellow, green, and orange. That's analogous colors. And then triad colors are colors that are equidistant from one another. So if you could see like the purple, red, and green, if you follow that triangle, those would be triad colors. Okay, next slide. So here you can see how these things have been applied. So analogous colors on the left, we chose those colors and then we blended them in order to create the wheel below them. Same thing with the next one, and then split complementary. And as you can tell, all the colors are very harmonious from one another. So there it is applied. Next slide. So characters, areas of rest and detail. Basically, detail, detail, if you have too much detail, then the eye doesn't know where to go. So if the character is fairly small, we want to create large areas so the eye can rest. And then we want to specify the few areas that we want detail. So if you modeled, let's say, a very detailed head, or, and that has to be used for the portrait. You don't want a bunch of detail everywhere else on the character because then the viewer won't know where to look. So large areas of rest with small areas, which all the detail, will give you a very clean read of the character. It'll help the person parsing it to have a very good eye and see exactly where you want to see. All right, next slide. All right, this just shows you that we do the same exact thing in values. It shows you basically what I just described applied in values. Okay, next slide. The other thing I would say is you always need to evaluate your content in the context of things. So in Dota, there's a day and night cycle, and there's two distinct areas of the map. One area is very green and lush, and the other area is kind of gray and gloomy. So we look at the characters in the day and night of both of those areas in order to make sure that it's reading properly. Okay, next slide. So this is a really fun slide because um, we the people that originally made some of these characters didn't apply those theories to it. So on the left, you can see that the character is very saturated, and on the bottom, you could see on the left, you can see that it really doesn't have strong values to it. So your eye doesn't necessarily know where to go on it. And then on the right, obviously, you can see we applied those concepts that we just talked about, and you could see how much cleaner and how much this is the same exact sculpture, but how much your eye goes directionally towards the top of the character and towards like, the top of the weapon, etc. So let's go to the next slide. This is just another application of it. You can see on both of these characters, like the saturation was too much in that saturation and value was too much on the head of the character on the left. And on the right, you can now clearly distinctly see the head of the character. Your eye is being drawn exactly where the player wants to see. Okay, next slide. So I talked about earlier shape models because this is the first step once we have the concept. It gets the character in the game really fast. And the name of the game when you're creating things or games or creating anything or doing anything is fail fast, fail often, so that you're able to learn from your mistakes and make things better. Um, you have to do most people that you see really beautiful work from did a bunch of things that looked horrible before they actually hit that. So over time, characters start evolving, getting a little bit more visual interest, um, but these models are very, very coarse. They're spheres, cylinders, you know, just very, very simple. So we can look at proportions and quickly make changes without very much work. Okay, next slide. So this is an example of shape model. As you can see on the left, it's just a it's just a series of like spheres that have been pushed around and then colored. Really, really simple. There's not much to it. Um, obviously, this is done executed at a higher level, but this is exactly what it is. Like the fingers are probably made of cylinders and then just sculpted a little bit. The arms are a bunch of cylinder or spheres that have been pushed around and made into the arm, etc. All right, next slide. So here you can see a shape model and then the final model. They're fairly close to one another. Um, we obviously made some changes to the shape model. I unfortunately did the earlier version of the shape model, and then you could see the final model and how close they are in terms of shape and read. And that's basically it. Next slide. So I created a document that kind of shows this and more. And the link to it is right here. It's called the Dota 2 Art Guide. If you go to the Dota workshop and in the asset creation guidelines, you could, see the full document. All right. Thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you. One of the things I love about my job, I was just realizing I learned so much just being, talking to you guys and watching this. This is so great. And thank you for providing it. We're almost out of time, but I do want to talk to you about networking and what your thoughts on that. You've mentioned it multiple times, but just if you could maybe summarize some of your strongest feelings about networking and or socializing and kind of letting people know who you are in the industry.
Yeah, some of the best things you could do is just start making connections. Things like LinkedIn, we've mentioned that already. Reach out, personalize your communication. Um, give them a brief understanding as to why you're reaching out. Then, once you've reached out, start engaging with them. Commenting on their work or liking or sharing, whatever they do, just so they, can see that you're engaged with them. Um, the other thing that I would say is start joining online industry discussions. Find like hashtags that are relevant to what you do, whether it's like game development or animation, and that'll help you not only communicate with people, get into industry discussions, but it'll also keep you updated on the industry trends. Um, Another thing that I would say is participate in game jams. Like game jams are extremely cool. People get together and create a game within a very short time frame, and it allows you not only to collaborate with people, meet other people. It showcases your skills, and it gives you a good understanding of what a team-based environment is. Let me think. What else? Stay in touch with recruiters. Like networking isn't just about applying for jobs. It's about building long-term relationships. Let's say you apply to a company. Not all companies will reply back, but the ones that do, you now have contact information with them, right? So you can send periodic updates of like, your latest works, right? You know, and do this by responding to their last email you heard from them. So they have that thread of reference helping keeping you on the radar, and it can be something as simple as, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. How are you doing? I wanted to share with you, the latest work that the latest work or, the latest pieces in my portfolio. And it could be as simple as that. And eventually that could build into a job because they not only see that you're dedicated, but shows your growth trajectory. Um, the other thing I would say is, build authentic relationships. You know, networking, you want to develop really good, meaningful uh, relationships, right? Take the time to know people, show genuine interest in their work, and potentially offer help, if they need it. Uh, and follow up with people. If you make a meeting, if you're in a meeting or make a connection, let's say you do a game jam, keep in contact with those people. Continually share with them. Um, personalize messages and like show gratitude, for something that you guys discussed. Um, the other thing I would say is, you know, s- uh, leverage alumni networks. Like I'm I can't stress this enough. There's an alumni network here, and there's things like open doors, there's Discord servers. I mean, I'm on Discord servers continually. So if you want to talk to me, you can go to the Full Sail 3D Arts one, and I'm generally hanging out in the Model Club along with other video game professionals, right? We have somebody that's worked at Sony that's now working at Probably Monsters. We have somebody that works at Turn 10 that's constantly in there, and all these people you can learn from. We're just hanging out in there talking. And people ask questions, people ask us to look at portfolios, etc. And then I guess the last thing I would say is showcase your work, like showcase your work continually, right? So people know you're actually working. So if you create a new piece, share it on social media. That builds visibility for you. It makes it easier for like industry pros to see it, and it just gives you a bit more recognition because if people continually see your name, they'll keep you in mind and potentially open doors for you and give you new opportunities. So yeah, I guess yeah, that'd be the more important ones that I would say.
Good, good. Well, excellent advice. I love the way you summed it all up there. I kind of put some pressure on you, I know, but you walk the walk that, or you, I forget what the phrase is, but basically, I mean, you're true to your word because in earlier discussions, you actually were doing some networking last night. I mean, these are friends of yours now, but still, it's important to get together with people that you've been in the industry with for a while. So you had a dinner. Was it was
Oh
just
yeah,
last night, right?
2 nights ago. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It was myself, Keith Garrett, which is a Full Sail Hall of Famer, Albert Perez, which is also another Full Sail Hall of Famer, and Daniel Gilbreth, which is a phenomenal artist. He was just out of school. His first job within the first month of him getting out of school was at Industrial Light and Magic. And now he's actually who I mentioned referencing somebody that works at Turn 10, Daniel
Mm-hmm.
Gilbreth.
Yeah.
And he's
And
also in
he's
that server.
and Daniel has helped us out on one of my alumni mixers. So yeah, and so I guess what I want to say is people don't have to wait for us to necessarily have an event, even though if you go to the alumni network, you'll see all of our events there. But they can do this on their own. It doesn't have to be large. It could be just 3 or 4 people, and the idea is to make friends, keep friends, and help one another out. Right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could even go to open doors, right? I mean, career
Yep.
development holds open doors. I am one of the people, one of the I guess event hosts for it. So I'm constantly in there on Wednesdays. I mean,
Yeah.
if I wasn't actually, doing this right here, I'd probably be in that server giving feedback.
Yes. Yes. Well, again, thank you for your time. Wonderful discussion. Thank you for all the knowledge. And everybody, stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you.
Thank, thank you guys.